Have you ever thought about running a Facebook group for your business? Or maybe you've thought about running one and then been like, oh, that's too hard. Or maybe you have run one and it kind of didn't really work. Or maybe you've got a really successful one. Hi, if that's you. I have got a really successful Facebook group person on the podcast today, Sarah Beisel. She is a Facebook group, I'm going to say expert because she's incredible at them. And she's going to help us today to work out if Facebook groups is a good thing for your business. You'll be actually quite surprised. I was quite surprised at her points of why we actually need a Facebook group for our business. And for her, it's actually her main form of social media. She doesn't focus on Instagram. Her business and her sales all come through her Facebook group and her podcast. And so I think you'll be surprised at what Facebook groups can do for you. And we're going to chat about not only if you decide to do one, but then how you can actually grow your business through them, how you can create community, how you can find new people to join the group, like all those practical things. We're going to chat through that as well. And so this is part of, I guess, a series that I'm going to be doing that helps us to think through different ways that we can promote our business, whether it's through Reels, whether it's through YouTube, whether it's through Facebook groups, so that you can kind of work out which things are going to be what you're going to pursue in your business. So if you don't know Sarah Beisel is a Facebook groups coach for Christian entrepreneurs who want to create engaged online communities. She helps them to launch and grow their Facebook groups so that they can build relationships with their audience. Sarah hosts a top 2% podcast, Simple Facebook Group Strategy, and is the founder of the Facebook Group Strategy for Christian Entrepreneurs community on Facebook. She believes that Facebook groups are the best way to build community online and one of the most successful ways to create impact and income. So join me on this episode and you'll love what you learn. Sarah, hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you. How you doing?
Good. I'm so excited to be here. I always love getting to chat with you, Jacqui.
I think this is the second time you've been on the podcast, which is I think you might nearly be the first guest I've had on for a second interview. So well done.
That's fun. That's exciting. And I think we chatted, it was quite a while ago now. I think we've both been through a few like brand changes and evolutions, and we're just like, hey, it kind of makes sense. Let's just chat again about some more things and see where it takes us.
Exactly. So I'm excited for today's chat. But before we dive on in, I want to just ask you the question I ask all of my guests, which is, what does an average day in your life and business look like? Like, what does life for Sarah look like behind what we're seeing online?
Yeah, such a fun question. I was just thinking about this. It's so variable, as I feel like most people with kids will say. So the days that I have childcare, it's great. Like my kid goes off, he goes to spend the day with grandma, and I can just, focus and do my thing, and it feels like a normal day. The days that I am looking after him, it's like we're running around, playing with toys, doing all the things, and I pretty much work when he goes to nap. Thankfully, he still naps. He's only 2, so we still get a good solid chunk of time in the middle of the day with a nap. And so I pretty much do all my work at nap time, and then we go back to mom mode as soon as he's up. So it's kind of crazy, but it works for now. I'm not looking forward to when nap time ends though, because I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, it's a bit different. We've definitely lost nap time for my eldest, and what happens though is, like, well, for her at least, she's gotten pretty good at playing by herself. So if there's things I need to tick away with, I can say, hey, let's do some coloring, and she does some coloring while I tick away on my laptop. So it's not gone totally, but it is definitely different.
Yeah.
Like
It's a little, because they still need a little bit more supervision than when they're just asleep,
Exactly. It's definitely not deep work time. Oh,
yeah.
What's that? Do you ever work in the evenings, or are you good at boundaries in that?
I try not to anymore because my brain is just so dead by the evenings. I'm also currently pregnant, so like by the time it gets to nighttime, I'm just like, no, I can't. I do try and have like a power hour in the morning first thing. Pregnancy has also pushed that aside because I'm just too tired and I sleep in, but usually I try and do an hour in the morning and then save my evenings for like, oh, we've got a big launch coming up, or there's like some big thing that needs prep. But most of the time I just need to take care of my house or sleep on the couch or whatever the evenings are for, right?
That's so good. I'm jealous of that. No, I need to. It's a whole thing. I'm going to do a podcast recording. It's probably actually already come out by the time this comes out, on what life has been like for me these last 6 months with having a newborn. So I'll have to reflect on that some more then. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. That was I love hearing a bit behind the scenes. So right, we're going to pick your brain around Facebook groups today. And I would love to know, like, are Facebook groups still a thing? Are Facebook groups still helpful to have as business owners?
Yeah, definitely. So it's one of the reasons I've become so passionate about Facebook groups in the last few years, is the fact that they're still going so strong, and almost stronger than ever before. And it's like, if you're looking at your Facebook timeline and you start paying attention to the types of posts that are popping up on your feed, it's either an ad, because Facebook loves ads, or it's pages or things that they're trying to recommend to you and you have no idea what they are, Or it's almost always, other than that, it's some type of post that's been made in a group that you're part of. Occasionally you see posts from your friends and family, but I feel like I don't see anything like that these days. It's almost always posts that are in groups. So Facebook really loves groups. And I think it's because people stay on the platform longer while they're in groups because they're talking to people, they're looking at things. Maybe they're, watching a video or a training or reading a resource or something, depending on the type of group. But people spend a lot of time in groups compared to just scrolling on other parts of Facebook. So they're trying to capitalize on that, which is nice. So it helps them, but it helps us if we are the ones participating in a group, either our own group or someone else's group, because that means that people might be seeing us a little bit more. So yes,
Yeah.
Facebook groups, I think, are definitely one of the strongest parts of Facebook right now, other than the whole ad side of thing, of course, but
Yeah.
that is a
I hadn't
different
even
conversation.
so it is another conversation. I hadn't thought about that, but you're totally right. Now I think about my Facebook. It's mostly, yeah, random pages. And I'm like, did I even follow that page? Why? And
I
like
know.
everything from that one page, I'm like, okay, cool. Just because I paid attention to it once doesn't mean I want it again. Yeah, that. And then groups, you're so right. So how do we then like, why should we, like, how can we use a Facebook group as a business?
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked this question as well, because I just recorded a podcast episode today on the difference between Facebook groups and business pages, because it's a question that I've seen a lot from people recently is like, well, can't I just use a business page? Like, why bother either having my own group or going through all that effort or using other groups? And I think I mean, there's a couple different reasons, but I think because Facebook is so ad happy, because, it makes them very profitable. Business pages are kind of useless unless you're running ads these days, because they just don't get the same reach that they used to back in the day when business pages were brand new and it was exciting and you could connect with all these businesses or celebrities or, whatever the pages were for back then. And they really pushed them. But now they're like, oh, we can make money from these.
Mhm.
So if you're not paying them for ads, your business page really just doesn't get close to the same amount of reach as it used to,
Mm.
which is it's a bit of a shame, because I think a lot of people are still kind of holding on to that idea that like we should just have a business page to run our business. And then when they're not seeing the kind of traction that they want organically, it's like, well, what's the point? Maybe I need a different platform. Maybe Facebook is in general is a problem. Maybe I'm the problem. There's just all these things that go through our minds, right? And I think it's just the fact that the way that their algorithm works, as far as we can understand, who really knows, but as far as we can guess, business pages just don't do the same that they used to. And so, you kind of have to move a little bit with the times. I kind of hate saying that, because I hate the idea that we have to always stay on top of all the changes and trends in social media, because it's exhausting. But I think when you notice these shifts that are changing the way that the platforms operate, then that's useful to pay attention to. And I think this is one of those ones where we're seeing, again, Facebook groups are very popular. People are continuing to join them. I think about 80% or so of Facebook users are participating in at least one group. And people that are in at least one group, I think, are then I think about 80% of those people are in at least 5 groups or more. I can't remember the exact statistics. I was looking at it recently, but it's a lot of people are in a lot of groups, is the kind of overview of that. And so why not take advantage of all those people being in groups, right?
I hadn't like, that's such a good point around, like, I haven't gotten confused before between a page and a group, but for my business, but I can imagine people would. And then I can imagine, yeah, that question of why do I need a group if I've already got a page? But you're right, like you don't like, then the reason I post to my Facebook page as a business is because I'm reposting what I've already done on Instagram, where I've got a community over
Mhm.
there. And so yeah, the if you want to be on Facebook, having a group is a far, far better way to create any sort of traction in your business. Hey, okay. And so
Mhm.
I'm going to just sprinkle this question in, but I want to kind of come back to what I'm talking about of like, why Facebook groups? Like there's so many other programs and platforms that we can
Mhm.
use for groups and communities. What makes Facebook a good option?
Yeah. So, and I always preface this by saying it kind of comes down to personal preference, because not everybody wants to be on Facebook. And if you really don't want to be on Facebook, that's fine. There are lots of good platform options, but Facebook as a platform is beneficial because it's the largest platform still used out there. I don't remember how many billions of users there are, but I think there's like I mean, I don't know. It's a lot. I'm not going to make it up, because I will probably get the statistic wrong, but it's the largest platform still. for all demographics, which is really cool. So you know that your audience is there somewhere, which is quite reassuring when you're looking to connect with the right people. But the thing I love about Facebook groups that I think is slightly different from a lot of other platforms is that the way that you can build relationships with people and connect with people is a little different than, say, on Instagram. A lot of people, like, you talk about your community on Instagram, and it's like, yeah, you have a kind of community, but it's not quite the same as being able to hear from people or
A
have other
back and
people
forth
connect with
community
each
with
other.
other people.
Like, it's a very kind of, it's either a one-to-one or a one-to-many type of relationship, rather than what I call, or what I describe as, a many-to-many relationship. And I think that there's something very special about creating a community around whatever your particular niche is, because it creates a kind of sense of bonding, a kind of camaraderie, and people really feel like they're on a journey together to do something, or to celebrate something, or accomplish something, whatever that group is centered around. And then, as the leader of the community, or the host, you can kind of come in and shepherd it and steward it and lead it. So it's not just about you kind of teaching your authority or sharing the things that you know, which is really important, but it's kind of about leading people in a direction. And I think that's a really helpful part of the sales process that we kind of don't talk about. We kind of talk about it a little bit in terms of having like your story posts, or having like these authority building posts, but it's not quite the same as being able to kind of demonstrate that in the sense of guiding people through something. And it's just something that is a little easier to accomplish in the space of a Facebook group compared to in other places. It's not to say it's not possible in other places, but it's just a little trickier because it's not set up for discussion in the same way that a Facebook group is.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I also think is that element that people are often already on it, so it's easier, like you say, like when you're
Mhm,
scrolling your Facebook feed, you get recommend, like you see the posts from the groups that you're in. Whereas if
mhm.
I'm like, say for example, I've got a Slack community for my program, but I would never have a Slack community as a free group
Yeah.
much, because it's people have to literally decide, I'm going to sign into this and participate in the group. Whereas on Facebook, it just pops up and they're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, my group's there, I'm going to
Yeah.
participate in it today.
Exactly. I know it's one of those things I toss up a lot, because there are some really great community platforms out there, but people are not naturally on them. It takes a lot of effort. There's a huge barrier to entry for that. And so it's like, well, they're great, but they're just not the same thing as being on, and that's the benefit of any social media platform, I suppose, but is that people are already there doing things. So why not have them do things with
jump,
you, right?
jump on the bandwagon, why not? Okay,
Yeah.
this is the question I told you I was going to ask you, but how do we decide like what to make a Facebook group about? Like, do we just make a group of like fans of Jacqui's business page, or do we do like something quite specific?
It is a good question. Yeah. So, gosh, I don't know if there's not really a simple way to describe it. I kind of describe it like, in my course, I kind of talk about teaching or starting a group that's like slightly broader than the thing that you offer, because a lot of people will think that, or they want to treat a group the same way that they would treat a billboard, kind of. So it's like, hey, here's the things that I offer, here's the things that I sell, buy the things, buy the things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of a community, people aren't necessarily going to join that, because they're like, oh, I don't really want to sign up for the flyers for your thing. Like, who keeps flyers that you get in the mail, right? You see them and you're like, cool, that's going in the recycling straight away. So the idea of having a community is having like some sort of foundation that is related to your offer, obviously, so you can sell and talk about all those things, but is slightly broader so that people have that kind of common ground coming in. So whether it's a common goal, a hobby or interest, a faith or mindset, or some sort of moral value, like whatever that foundation is, having something there that you can kind of build your community around, and then guide people in a direction that you're trying to take them to that leads to the things that you sell. So they kind of connect up. But I always like to think of it as something like a step slightly broader, because sometimes you get a little bit too focused on like selling the exact thing, and then it becomes a little bit tricky to actually convince people to join.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I find, yeah, I feel like it's important to get that right group
Mhm.
thing. Yeah, and I like that, the idea of maybe you do need to go broader than everything, and then kind of narrow people in afterwards once they're kind of in and you're sharing some different bits and pieces, then you can.
Yeah. I always use like I hate to pick on MLMs because there are some good things about them, but I always use it as an example of like kind of like what not to do, because they just do what they get taught, which is you create your like VIP group for. I always pick on Arbonne because a lot of my friends used to sell Arbonne, and it's like, okay, so it's like Sarah's VIP Arbonne people, and it's like, okay, I guess I'll join because I bought something from you, but I'm not really paying attention to it because all you're doing is telling me about the products and stuff. And it's like, okay, fine. I guess if I'm interested in buying a thing, I'll take advantage of something being on sale. Great. But it's not going to really bring new people in. You're still doing a lot of work to try and find people to come into that group. Whereas if you had that group be something like in the health and wellness or something skincare related, and it's like, skincare tips for oily people. I don't know. I don't know anything about skincare, so it's a terrible example, but the first thing that came to mind. But then, people that are like, oh, I need some help with my skin. Like, I don't really know what's going on. You come into
Yeah.
this group to learn things about skincare, and you're kind of in this community about how to take care of your skin, health routines, all these things. And then you can kind of come and say, hey, Arbonne's got some pretty great products that
Mm.
might help you with this thing. And so it becomes an easier transition between like not knowing what to do and buying something versus the first thing that people see being come buy this thing. It's kind of like it's kind of off-putting. So
Yeah.
that's a good example of how to kind of position those things. I guess sometimes we need like a visual. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's good. I like that. Skincare for oily. Okay, it's good.
I don't
Okay.
don't use that as a group name. That's not the best, but
I
that's
mean, it
okay.
was clear, and like I would
Yeah,
like if I had oily skin, I would definitely join it. So look, I feel like maybe do use it. Okay, so
maybe it is great.
I had a Facebook group once that was a free Facebook group that was for my business.
Mhm.
But one of the things I struggled with was getting people to be there, to talk, to engage, to share, like to not whether it was to comment on my own stuff or to post their own things or to do anything. So how can we create an engaged Facebook group, people actually showing up in it, and it is like a bustling community rather than just
Mhm.
a flyer stand for you?
Yeah. And it's something that becomes easier the more people you have in there. So ironically, one of my first engagement tips is always to just get more people in your group because the most engaged people are most of the time they're brand new or are in the first couple months of being in their group. So it's one of the things that I think, I mean, even I forget this sometimes, but we kind of forget that one of the best engagement strategies is just find more people that are interested in joining your space because they will be much more excited to be there than people that have been there for a year or two or even more, depending on how old your group is. But something I've noticed recently that I've started doing that I love, and I've seen being very successful in other groups as well, is asking a lot of questions. And I think this is something that is, again, better in Facebook groups than on other platforms, is it's set up for discussion. And I think asking people questions, and it can be things related to your business and your offers. It can also just be fun, random things. Like we ask, I have my Facebook group is a faith-based group as well. And so we have questions about faith and church and things like that that go on, and people love to talk about those kinds of things. So it's not all business related, right? We're getting to know each other as people as well. But the way that Facebook is set up, because you can use those nice color block posts, so it's bright and colorful, people see questions really easily. And it's usually very easy to answer a question. It doesn't always take very long. Usually, you can answer a question somewhere between like 5 and 25 seconds, depending on the type of question, but it doesn't take a lot of effort. And I think that's one of the things that is really important to remember when it comes to getting people to engage is that people have very short attention spans and they are often not scrolling with a lot of purpose. So actually getting people to stop what they're doing to like turn their brain on for a second and participate in something requires it to be a very simple like process or simple thing for them to do. So I always love asking the deeper questions sometimes because it is really important to go to those next levels, but most of the time they get a lot less response than like, do you prefer coffee or tea, or what kind of drink are you buying from Starbucks this weekend? Like people will answer those a lot quicker than they will answer some question about like, oh, what's your biggest struggle with a Facebook group? Like I'll get answers, but not as many. But in general, questions are a really great thing to test out if you're not already doing that in a Facebook group.
That's a good tip. And do you like, so they don't have to like you'd probably recommend a range of questions in terms of like some
Yeah.
like super related to your niche and what you're wanting to share, and also some that are kind of just broad that
Mhm.
all the humans in that group will have in common. Like
Yeah.
well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Other people like coffee, and so like a coffee thing or like a what's the weather? No, you wouldn't do what's the weather there, but you could. Like I would actually probably comment on that. I'd be like, oh, the weather today in here is like really rainy, and people would be like, oh, the weather here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
yeah.
if you have a global audience, because most of the time we do now, it is actually kind of fun to ask those kinds of seasonal questions. It's like, okay, I know it's, fall time here. Obviously, for you in Australia, you're gearing into spring. So we have very different weather and experiences right now. So it is kind of fun to be able to bond on those things. But
Yeah.
yeah, basically I create, like I have a kind of template that I follow to guide the kind of questions that I create so that I'm always creating a variety, but it makes sure that I'm doing the business questions. I'm doing the things related to my offer. I'm doing the things related to faith. I'm doing the things related to like fun and random things. So you're getting a broad experience, and you can kind of set that up however you really want to. But as long as you're giving yourself that range of topics, then it helps people engage a little bit more, because it's not just the same one or two topics that you're talking about all the time as well. So it helps it feel fresh.
Yeah. And I totally understand your point around the new people engaging more. Like even in I do still have a Facebook group for my course, my DIY course. And when people
Mhm.
join, like it's just so interesting to see, like then they just go bananas participating and
Yeah.
commenting and doing all the things. I'm like, oh, this is so great. But I was literally thinking last night, the vibe of the group changes really quite regularly, because those new people that they show up for a few months and they're really into it. And then a new group of new people come in, and it kind of just keeps on evolving and changing depending on
Hmm.
who those new people are. So I think it is really great to continue to get those new people. But that's a question. Like, how do we get new people? What are some ways that we can get people into a Facebook group?
Yeah, so my favorite strategy is to use other Facebook groups, because as we had just talked about at the beginning, if people are in one group, it's very likely that they are also in like at least 5 others, if not more. People are in a lot of different Facebook groups, which is great because it means if they're in one, they're very likely to say, yeah, this is a group I'm interested in. I'll join another one. Why not? We're kind of collecting them. I had someone request to join my group once. I think they were in like 600 groups. I don't know how you keep track of 600 groups, but I think that's one of the highest numbers I think I've ever seen. I don't know if I've seen into the thousands. Maybe I haven't. I've just not remembered. But oh my goodness, people are in a lot of groups, which is crazy. I think that's too many. But point being, going to
Facebook
someone
groups,
else's Facebook group is a great place to find people that might want to join yours, because not very many people are going to say no if it's something that is related to something that they're interested in or trying to learn or figure out. So I have a whole growth strategy that takes like maybe 15 minutes a day. It's not a huge amount of time commitment. And I just go into groups strategically. I have some specific tasks that I set myself to do. Networking, sharing some authority, some engagement things, it's very standard things. It's nothing that's like kind of crazy, but it helps me get into different places that are not my places. I can network, and then when it makes sense to people, or when it makes sense to me to invite people, I invite them into my group, and a lot of the times they say, "That sounds great. I'd love to join." And a lot of times groups have promotional opportunities because it's a really good way to boost engagement. Coming back to that question, if you have the type of group that makes sense to offer people the space to promote their businesses, people will because they want to get the word out about the things that they're trying to sell. So it's always a great way to be able to put yourself out there, because a lot of groups have either a comment thread or they have a day where you can share a post. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can share what you're doing in your business. So you can just go to those spaces and be like, hey, I have a group for this, that, or the other. Come join skincare for oily people. Come do it. We'll teach you how to take care of your skin, you know.
I think the problem I have with that language is it's oily people.
It's, I know.
Really offensive.
Maybe it's like a kind of balance between healthcare and like comedy. I don't know.
Perfect. It's great. It's making me cry. Okay. Good tips. Okay. I find it quite nerve-wracking going into other people's groups and doing those things. But I guess if, like you say, you're going in there, you're building connection, you're
Mhm.
sharing value, like you're doing other things as well. It's more of a natural flow to invite people to your group as well.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just an extension of what you'd be doing in your own group anyway. So if it's something that you're regularly doing within your own Facebook group, you're kind of used to that process of asking a question or creating a post or doing those things anyway. So it's just like, oh, I just need to do this exact same thing over
Mm,
here instead, and see
yeah.
what new people I can kind of connect with. So yeah, it's a very similar feeling once you kind of establish those patterns and rhythms and you're used to it. You're not really doing something that's vastly different from what you'd be doing in your own Facebook group, which is another reason I like to use that strategy for growing, because you're not
Yeah.
really having to teach yourself something new.
That's such a good point. You make it sound so straightforward and easeful. Okay, like speaking of like time, like how much time should we be spending in our Facebook group creating community? Like I'm sure you've seen some patterns or ways that it work.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the more time you invest into something, the more you're going to get out of it, but I I do everything that I need to do for my group that has, I think over 2,000 members in there now, and I'm still only needing about 30 minutes a day to do everything that I need to do, and that's including the actual admin and running of the group and networking in my own group and all of the tasks that require me to go to someone else's group. So I keep a very tight ship because, like we talked about, toddler moms, we don't have a lot of time. I could spend an hour or two if I really wanted to. I would maybe be able to do something a little faster or accomplish it more, but it's not necessary. You can still make a lot of good progress with just 15 to 30 minutes a day, which I think is really reassuring, because I think we have to take the hours and hours and hours, and it's like you could, if you have that time, great, but it's really not essential to actually make progress, which is nice to know.
And I know for you, your Facebook group is your main form of social media, correct?
Yeah, it's the
So, like,
only social media that I'm on now. I have my own podcast, but that's it. I have a podcast, my email list, and the things that are like off social media, and then I have Facebook. I used to do Instagram, and I'm not an Instagram person.
yeah,
So
well,
I
people
just
aren't.
decided it is not something that I flourish in. So I haven't been on Instagram and most of this year.
Yeah,
I don't remember when I stopped,
I
but it's been
reckon.
a long time. So
And so, like, 'cause I think some people will be like, oh, it take like a half an hour a day. That's a whole extra thing that I need to be putting time towards. But at the same time, if maybe other social medias aren't really working for you right now, maybe take the time that you would spend on those things, like half an hour a day on Instagram isn't absurd, and put
mhm.
that towards a Facebook group, because I'm assuming for you to be pushing so hard into Facebook groups, it does grow your business. Like, you have seen that actually work for your business.
Yeah, and yeah, because how long have I been off of Instagram? Like almost a year, and I've still been making sales. I've got new students coming into my course, and like all these things are still happening, without me having to do stuff on Instagram. I think that was the only other place that I was doing. I think we look at, it's one of these things I've noticed is when the people that we're looking up to in our businesses are obviously much further along down the line of whatever it is we're trying to do. And so I think sometimes there's kind of this just misconception that they are where we are. And so we see people that are on Facebook and Instagram, and they're doing TikTok, they're doing YouTube, they're in all the places. And it's like, oh, I need to show up in all the places too. But we forget sometimes, like, they have a team. They are making a lot more money than we are. They have a team that's helping them on each of those platforms. Maybe they have, sometimes it could just be even interns helping, because that's something that I've got now in my business. I have some interns that help me run my group. But and that's, eased some of the load, but there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that I think we forget about. And until we're at the point where we have the ability to have a team sustain these different platforms, really we should just be focusing on one. And so if it is Instagram, great, go for it. If it's YouTube, great, go for it. But if it's Facebook, great, go for it, commit to it. So whatever the one platform is that you want to be focusing on for your personal preferences, your skills and abilities, where your audience actually is and where they're consuming their content, like, go hard into that one thing, because it takes a lot of stress off of you. And then you're going to see a little bit more traction because you're focusing on one thing to really master it. And I think that was the thing for me with Instagram. It's like, maybe I could master it if I wanted to, but it doesn't make me feel like happy to be on here. I don't like reels. I don't want to spend the whole day trying to like showcase my life, because my life is, I mean, I guess it's interesting to someone, but it's kind of boring. I just couldn't figure out what to do with stories that made it fun, right? And some people, it's so natural for them. It's just like second nature. So it's all about finding the thing that makes the most sense for you and your audience.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, well, I like to talk. I like to chat with people. Facebook is perfect for that, and
Yeah.
it's way less visually demanding than something like Instagram, which is nice.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that's such wise advice of, like, I love Instagram because I do love that visual side of things, and I
Mhm.
don't like, I'm less good at the talky stuff. And
Yeah.
so that works perfect. And so that's the idea of, well, find one thing that that you click with and go hard into that, rather than trying to spread yourself too thin over everything. Like, you could choose to have like an Instagram you barely touch if you want to, and so it's just there, and then you could have a Facebook
Yeah.
just there, but then you can have I don't think TikTok you could just make an account, I guess, but I ain't gonna do that. It's too much. That's another thing. But
Yeah.
what your thing is, and then and actually giving you that time to that. And as you said,
Mhm.
like a Facebook group can be just as incredible for a business as an Instagram page, and vice versa. It could be more incredible. And so
Yeah.
being able to find that platform that's going to suit you and suit your audience as well. Like if you're working with just teenagers that are 13 years old, but you find most of your teenagers aren't on Facebook, then don't do a Facebook group. But if
Yeah. Maybe TikTok will work for that audience, you know?
exactly, but if your audience is on Facebook, then that's it's such a viable place for you to invest your time into learning and to doing a good job of that. And I'm assuming that because you've got that genuine community that you've built with people, it does feel quite fulfilling to interact in that space because you're creating connections with humans, and that always feels nice.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's a big part for me about why Facebook groups ended up being the thing I settled on is because I've always I didn't notice it at the time, but like looking back, I've always been very interested in creating some sort of sense of community or being part of community or being very interested in how communities work or are not functional. It was one of the things, it's funny looking back, that was like my biggest frustration during COVID was just the breakdown of community and how little people were doing to try and successfully make that like prioritize that in some way. And it's funny looking back because I'm like, wow, yeah, I can definitely see I have some sort of passion for community. I just didn't recognize it at the time because I didn't even have a business back then, really. Like it was, everything was brand new. So
Yeah.
it's all about finding the things that are passionate, like that you're passionate about. But if you are like, if you have that in you that you're like, wow, I really do need to, be part of community or help nurture that in some way, then a Facebook group is perfect for you for that reason.
Yeah. That's so, so true. All right. Any last nuggets of wisdom of things that we should like if someone's listened to this podcast and they're like, you know what? I think I'm going to give Facebook groups a go. What are some things that you would just recommend off the cuff to share with them that we might not have chatted about already?
Oh gosh, let's see, because we've chatted about so many things here. I
That's
think
a good tip.
it's going to sound almost like backwards advice, but I think one of the things to remember is it does take some time, and don't let yourself get frustrated or give up too soon, because I think that's something that a lot of people, again, just in this kind of like culture of instant overnight successes and everything is like possible in like a day, it's just not the reality of things. And I think sometimes, especially when it comes to building engagement, people get very frustrated that it's not happening quickly enough. And so like my biggest piece of advice is always to lead by the example that you want to set. And so you need to engage first. You need to show up every day to post, whether it's a question or a tip or something longer. Like it doesn't need to be a book that you're writing every single day, but having something in your group every day sets the example and sets the tone for people to then want to do that with you. And so I think sometimes we're just like, why are things not happening? It's like, well, what are you doing? Are you setting that example for your group? I've had to do that myself, like check myself. It's like, oh, actually, I'm not showing up in my group. That's why people are not showing up for me. So it's
Yeah.
just, I mean, I guess that's the same kind of rule applies to whatever platform you're on, but I think it's just an extra reminder that we have to show up the way we want people to show up for us.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go down the route of a Facebook group, like I'm so excited for you, go do it, but just make sure that you are ready to show up every day for it, because it's not something that you can show up once a week for in the same way that you could show up in a blog once a week, I suppose, right? But it's still a social media platform. You do need to be present, but it
Yeah.
doesn't need to take all day, right? It can be done quickly and efficiently,
Yeah.
but it still needs to be done consistently.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good point. It's such a good point. Do you like, and are you like when you say every day, like are you like 5 days a week, 7 days a week, multiple
I
times a
have I have content that goes out 7 days a week. I'm not personally there 7 days a week. I batch things. I do things in advance.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have some interns now that help me on to moderate, especially on the days on the weekends and stuff where I'm trying to take a rest for myself. But I
Yeah.
have something that goes into my group at least once a day, if not twice a day now.
Mm.
You obviously don't need to start there, right? Start at what's reasonable for you and work your way up. But you need to be present all of the time, but that doesn't necessarily mean every single day. You can do things batching it in advance, scheduling it, all those beautiful things. So
Yeah.
that helps a lot.
And I've seen Facebook has they're creating more admin things that make it even easier to do all of those things. So
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's we'd be here for an hour to talk about all of that. It's great. There's a lot of good progress on
that's
the
good.
Facebook front, which is nice.
That's good. I only just noticed it really in my own group. I was like, I've been getting my assistant to like schedule all these posts every single week. And I'm like, hold on, I'm pretty sure we can just ask Facebook to do that now. So I'm
Yeah.
very excited.
Yeah, and they're new. It's only been in the last year or two that those things have kind of been a thing. I don't think I'd noticed them before this year, so it's still very new, but it's Wonderful. So yeah, there's lots of great things that Facebook has now that help make running a group even easier than it used to be, which is really nice.
Sounds like, yeah, as you say, they really are pushing it. So we can kind of
Yeah.
lean into this change and not, it's not even change, like it's always, Facebook groups have always been a thing, but lean into the flow and go with it and
Yeah.
see what it can take us and how we can use it, I guess, to our advantage for our businesses.
Yeah.
That's so great. Okay. And so if we want to work with you or learn more about Facebook groups or anything, how can we be in touch with you? Obviously not Instagram.
Yeah. No, not on Instagram. Lots of different ways. I mean, obviously, I have my own Facebook community. It's called Simple Facebook Group Strat. Oh, no, it's not. My podcast is called Simple Facebook Group Strategy. I always do that because they're slightly different. My Facebook group is called Facebook Group Strategy for Christian Entrepreneurs. Like I said, it's a faith-based group, but I'm not going to hate on you if you don't happen to be a faith-based person and still want to come hang out. Like, please do. I'd love to see you there. I have my podcast, which is Simple Facebook Group Strategy. I actually have a free boot camp coming up in just a few weeks, I think, from when this will be airing, which is exciting, which is going to teach you some of these strategies that we've been talking about how to actually set up a group, how to get it optimized, how to get the engagement flowing. So if you are thinking that like you'd be interested in starting a group, but you're not quite sure, come along to a free event. It'll be great. There's going to be a lot of teaching, some fun prizes and all the things. So if that's interesting to you, you can register at, I'm sure we'll put it all in the show notes and stuff, but you can register at sarahbeisel.com/bootcamp. You'll probably need to go to the show notes for spelling because it's terrible trying to spell all of these things.
At least Sarah's normal.
Sarah's normal. Well, even that though, sometimes it's like, is it with an H or without an H? It's like, oh gosh, everything needs qualifying these days. And I have tons of free resources on my website as well. So if you follow sarahbeisel.com and snoop around, there's lots of free things. The podcast has everything as well. So lots of ways to get stuck in and learn about everything Facebook groups.
So good. That bootcamp does sound amazing. So make sure you jump onto that if you're interested with a Facebook group. And like Sarah said, I'll add those notes to the description. And if you've missed the bootcamp because you're listening to this down the track, just have a look on Sarah's website because I'm sure there'll be a few good resources there for you anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Yay. Well, thank you for joining us. I so appreciate your insight and wisdom here. And yeah, have an amazing day.
Thanks for having me.
So I hope you enjoyed that episode and I hope you found it as useful and inspiring as I did. And I would love to know if you ever create a Facebook group from listening to this, let me know in feel free to message me on Instagram. My handle is whitedeergd and let us know, like, are you excited to create your own Facebook group? What name are you going to call it? And what kind of questions are you going to share in there? All of the fun things. So thanks for joining me and I'll see you next week for another episode.